What's up, everybody? Back with another professional pick survivor video. This time we're talking week 5 schedule preview and picks. As always, if you're liking this video, don't forget to like, let us know in the comments who you're taking this week, and subscribe to keep getting our NFL content week in and week out. Taking a look at the games this week, we got plenty of teams that are favored by more than 3.5, which is always good. A few that are favored by more than a touchdown, and that's usually the ones you want to hone in on for your survivor picks. But as always, we will consult the schedule for the rest of the season and try to make a pick more strategically. If I'm looking here, there are some teams that, like the Lions, where I think I might be picking them plenty of times for the rest of the season, where there are teams like the Bengals, the Commanders, even the Eagles and Ravens, who are good teams that I might not be picking for a long time, if not only a few times the rest of this season. So something to always keep in mind when you're making survivor picks. And we will start, as we always do, we're talking about the teams we should proceed with caution and think twice and think long and hard about if you really want to go with these guys for your survivor pick in week 5. The first team being the 49ers hosting the Cowboys. This is going to be a great game and probably one of the most watched games of the week. 49ers are one of 2 undefeated teams in football, the other being the Philadelphia Eagles, hosting the Cowboys, who laid an egg in week 3 against the Cardinals, but have since looked incredibly strong, especially on the defensive side of the football, holding the Patriots to only 3 points. Niners are 3.5 points favorites here, and I really think you should be wary of taking this game, not because the Niners aren't a good football team, but because the Cowboys are so strong in my mind. They have everything on paper that you would want in a football team, especially as an upset. They have a solid offensive line, although it's not as good as it had been the years past. Very solid Pro Bowl quarterback, great running back in Tony Pollard, and some weapons at wide receiver highlighted by CeeDee Lamb. And then on the defensive side of the football, you got a ton of great playmakers at every level. At linebacker or edge rusher, depending on what scheme that you're in, you got Micah Parsons as a do-it-all guy and one of the best players in the league on defense. Trayvon Diggs at cornerback, and then Leighton Vander Esch at linebacker. So all around, really solid team. No holes in this Cowboys team. They're just not as fundamental and put together as the 49ers. I think part of that's on their head coach. But regardless, you have to respect the 3.5 points here that the Niners are going to get. This is probably the least amount of points the Niners will ever be favored this year, especially when they're at home. Home field advantage 2 to 3 points here. This game is incredibly close, and I would advise that you stay away because there will be plenty of other opportunities to take the 49ers in games where they will surely win by 10 plus points. This is not one of those games. Moving on to the next game that you should be a little bit cautious about. That's the Ravens on the road against the Steelers. This line has since moved to 4.5, so the public is liking the Ravens more and more. And how can you blame them, given the Steelers laid an egg against the Texans in Houston this week, got torched on defense by C.J. Stroud, and really couldn't do much on offense for the Steelers. This Ravens team is certainly better than the Texans, one of the top defenses in the league. So if the Steelers couldn't do anything against the Texans, it's hard to believe they can do anything against the Ravens. And on the flip side, Lamar Jackson is clearly a much better quarterback than C.J. Stroud, as he is a former MVP of the league. That all being said, I'm cautious about this game because of the fact that it's the Steelers at home against a divisional opponent. Something about these Steelers throughout the entirety of Mike Tomlin's tenure as the Steelers head coach, they have a knack for winning divisional games. They have a knack for keeping those close, especially when they're at home. Now, it's something that you saw against the Steelers, against the Browns earlier this season on, I think it was Monday Night Football, where their defense totally dominated and kept them in the game, and that's something that has potential to happen again, always does, against a divisional opponent when the Steelers are at home. I always try to stay away from home teams in divisional games, especially when they're not favored by more than a touchdown, and so this is a scary spot to be in. I think it's best to stay away. That being said, it's not the worst spot to take the Ravens, but again, you'll have at least one more opportunity to take them later this year when they play the Cardinals. One last game to talk about for the caution is the Bengals at the Cardinals, and I have a feeling this is going to be a popular pick, or at least very widely considered for this week. And the reason I'm nervous about this game, Bengals 4.5 point favorites. They made it to the AFC Championship the last 2 seasons and a Super Bowl in one of those, but they just have not looked right this season. Pro Football Focus has them ranked as a bottom 5 team overall with their performance. So you think they're going to come back and make a step up and play like the Bengals of old, but the performance thus far in the season has not shown us that. On the flip side, the Cardinals, who came into the season with the lowest expectations of any team, they were, and probably still are, the underdog in every single game coming into the season. They've looked really strong. They only have one win, and that's against the Cowboys, oddly enough, but they have looked much better than people gave them credit for, and that's really highlighted by Josh Jacobs, the quarterback, doing great work there in Arizona. Add on top of that, the Bengals are on the road here. They're struggling, especially in the run game, behind that poor offensive line that has been plaguing the Bengals ever since they drafted Joe Burrow. It is certainly a scary spot with them being on the road. I think, again, it's going to be a widely considered pick because the Bengals are due for a bounce back win, especially if they want to play in the playoffs come 2024 in January and February. So this is a game where they really do need to win and turn it around, but it's still pretty scary given the way both these teams have looked. The Bengals certainly trending down and the Cardinals trending up. Now we can talk about the picks that we do want to select this week in Week 5. And the best pick, as it usually is, it's a team that's favored by the most points. Right now, that's the Dolphins, who opening line at 9.5. I suspect that will inch closer to 10.5 and even 11 as bettors keep hammering the Dolphins here. This one, to me, is a no-brainer. Dolphins coming off a loss, an embarrassing loss against the Bills where they lost by double digits after they put up 70 against the Broncos. This is a time for them to bounce back and, one, stay within the division, but also beat up on a much lesser opponent like the New York Giants. Giants are Pro Football Focus's worst overall ranked team, and that's probably their margin for that title will probably only grow when Monday Night Football is all said and done. The Giants really can't do anything on offense, especially without Saquon Barkley, who likely will be back in this game, although I don't think it'll matter. You see this against, and this is so highlighted by the game Monday night, they can't get anything in the run game. They have nothing in the pass game, and this is against a defense like the Seahawks that is ranked 25th in the league. Now, the Dolphins' defense isn't anything to write home about, but it's certainly better than the Seahawks. They have a good secondary with Xavier Howard there, and they've been playing pretty well defensively. And offense, they have the best offense in the league. So this Giants defense against the Dolphins offense is a huge mismatch. Look for the Dolphins to put up 30-plus points again this game. And the Giants, I can guarantee they're not going to be able to match the output for the Dolphins. And I think this is a great pick. In a situation where the Dolphins are going back home, playing a much lesser opponent than the Giants, who just really can't seem to get anything going this season. Now, I always talk about the best pick, and then right after is the best value. Looking for a team that is not a team that is likely to make the playoffs and one of the top tier teams in the league, but finds himself in a good situation for a survivor pick this week. And right now, that is the Washington Commanders at home Thursday night against the Bears. Bears are reeling after blowing a 21-point lead against the Broncos at home. Now they travel to Washington, again, short week, and play a superior team, the Commanders, who looked much better after they got demolished by the Bills when they went to Philadelphia and played the Eagles, lost there in overtime. It's really the tail of the tape for the Commanders is how is Sam Howell going to play at quarterback, their second-year quarterback. He looked awful against an incredibly good Bills defense, but they really stepped it up, like I said, in Week 4 against a really solid Eagles defense. And if he can hold on to the football, then they're going to win this game. Coupled with that this Bears defense is one of the bottom-tier units in this league, I have no doubt that the Commanders, like everyone else in the league, will be able to torch this Bears defense. One other point for the Commanders here that really makes this pick compelling is I love their defensive front, especially their front four. They'll be able to effortlessly get pressure on Justin Fields rushing 4, dropping back 7 in coverage. The Bears get down early and force Fields to throw. We've seen all season long that Fields is prone to turn the ball over either with fumbling or throwing an interception. So the Commanders here, my prediction is they win the turnover battle, dominate the line of scrimmage, and beat the Bears pretty handily at home on Thursday night. And look at the schedule for the Commanders right there in the bottom. If you weren't convinced before to take them from the strategy perspective, I really think it works because you're not going to pick them on the road against Atlanta, not on the road against the divisional opponent. Philadelphia just beat them. New England's a solid team, especially on the road. They're out of their home, out of conference schedule is very difficult when you're looking at teams like Miami, San Francisco, Dallas. Those are situations that you're just not going to take the Commanders. So I think it's a really good spot to take them. Again, short week against the Bears, who are proving more and more each week that they are the worst team in the league. So all things considered, Dolphins are a great pick, but I think the Commanders have great value. And I really would be surprised they lost this game, but if they do, it's going to be because of Sam Howell interceptions. So that's just one thing to keep an eye out for. I really do think the Commanders are the best value, but there's still other value to be had. And it's a team that I had already mentioned, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. I already warned you why I think this pick is scary, but it doesn't mean that there's not value in taking the Bengals. Again, I think this is going to be a widely considered pick in your leagues, and high risk, high reward here because you're really not going to use the Bengals too many other times this season unless they turn it around somehow and start looking like the Bengals of the last 2 seasons. But Joe Burrow, nursing that leg injury, this offensive line with how poor of a play they've been having. T. Higgins now hurt with a rib injury. Things keep getting worse and worse for the Bengals. It should be a prime situation, though, for a bounce-back win. They are 4.5-point favorites, despite the way they've looked all season long. And their schedule, the remaining season, isn't too promising for a potential survivor pick. Look here at the Bengals on this third line here. Again, it's all about, really what I'm looking for is out-of-conference home games. And Seattle, you could maybe pick them next week depending how Cincinnati looks, but probably not what you're going to take. Buffalo at home is a terrible spot to take them. Houston at home, although Houston is trending up, is a great spot for Cincinnati. Indianapolis, they've been looking better of late. You could make the argument for Minnesota, but there's not a ton of opportunity for the Bengals, given the way they've looked so far this season. Only 1 win, and only put up 3 points against the Titans last week. So they're reeling. I'm not too confident in this team right now, so I think it's a great time to take them for value. But I do really, really, really want to caution this pick. I really want to caution because the Cardinals have looked better. They surprised people at home with their win against the Cowboys. If they can do it against the Cowboys, they can certainly do it against the Bengals. I suspect in that Cowboys game, I'll caveat that I think the Cowboys were looking way past the Cardinals and didn't really give them the time of day. The Bengals will not be doing it this game because it really is a must-win situation. And because it's a must-win situation for the Bengals, I have I would be very surprised if they lost just given Joe Burrow's talent in paired with Jamar Chase. But again, these Cardinals have looked good all year and makes it for a good value, but certainly not the most value on this card. Other picks you want to talk about real quick, you got the Lions here. Lions versus Panthers. Panthers are one of 2 winless teams for the Chicago Bears in this league. Going to Detroit, who's looked really good in just about all phases of the football here. What they got going on up there in Detroit, especially offensively, is great. They got Jared Goff in a great system, making him pass the ball in rhythm, timing routes with great receivers, really using both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, much to the chagrin of fantasy owners, sparingly in that offense. They have a great offensive line. I really do think the Lions are a solid pick this week, but I do think you give a lot of opportunity to pick the Lions down the road later in the season as well. For the next game, you got the Chiefs at the Vikings. I think it's a good spot. I mean, the Chiefs have looked so good once Travis Kelce came back after that initial loss against the Lions. The Vikings here, I keep thinking they're going to stop turning the ball over and figure it out. They have not yet. It didn't cost them last week against the Panthers, but it very well could have. And it will cost them against better teams like the Chiefs. Chiefs uncharacteristically turned the ball over twice against the Jets and came out with a win still on Sunday Night Football in the Taylor Swift game. But I don't suspect that happening this week for the Chiefs. I do suspect the Vikings to keep committing turnovers. And with how poor that Vikings defense is, I don't think the Chiefs are going to struggle to put up too many points. I would stay away from this one because, 1, on the road. 2, I think the Chiefs will play easier teams than the Vikings. There's some probably desperation for the Vikings here at 1 and 2, looking to keep themselves relevant in the playoff picture. And the Vikings are so potent at offense, it's probably worth just staying away in this situation. We got the Rams here hosting the Eagles. The Eagles 5.5-point favorites. Again, I normally like to avoid road teams. I think the Rams look better than people think after a nice win against the Seahawks in Week 1 and then going into Indianapolis with the win. Especially, it's on the table that Cooper Kupp could return soon. Probably not this game, but it's imminent. And, a team at home as well coached as the Rams are with Sean McVay is a little scary. You're going to get the Eagles in a better spot. They haven't looked all that great this season. Granted, they are 4-0, but those games have all been close for the most part. And while 4-0 feels good, Eagles fans certainly want their team to be looking a little bit better and a little more polished, more Super Bowl caliber. And it's probably a good situation to stay away from the Eagles on the road here as they're still getting their groove back and finding their way to become more championship form. Another perennial annual weekly survivor pick with the Bills hosting the Jaguars at -4.5 is what the line opened at. It has since been pushed, I think, to -6. So the public and the analytics are loving the Bills here. And how can you not after they just put up 40 points against one of the best teams in football, the Dolphins? This game is in London, so this 4.5 is a true favorite instead of the couple points they'll get for being a home contender. Jags get to stay 1 week in London after beating the Falcons last week. That's got to play to their advantage a little bit, just being acclimated to the time zone and being in all things London, England. But it's probably a good spot to take the Bills in terms of they're going to win the game. But just like many other great teams that you see in this list every week, you're going to find better spots than -4.5, -6, even if it is at a neutral site. That being said, I don't think it's a bad pick. The Jags have disappointed me so far this season. Their offense has not been up to the caliber that I think they're capable of. The only difference last week from the Jaguars versus 2 weeks ago is that Trevor Lawrence didn't turn the ball over. That's the reason they won, and their defense made opportune plays and even gave them 7 points. So the offense has looked really sluggish for the Jaguars. This Bills defense has looked absolutely stunning. Even though Trey White, their star cornerback, is out for the season, I don't think they're going to have too big of issues with the Jaguars. But really in Survivor, you don't want to be taking teams against, playoff caliber teams, and that's what the Jaguars are, despite what they've looked this season. I think they're going to end up winning that AFC South, and if they're going to, they're going to keep games close against good opponents like the Bills, so probably best to stay away, in my opinion. Just a quick review here. I think the Dolphins are easily the best pick. I would be really shocked to see this line stay at 9.5. I bet either public hammers this and starts pushing this more to 10.5, 11. Their offense is simply too overpowering for the Giants and too fast. The Giants can put up 25 points this game, even 30 points. I still don't think they're going to win this one, all things being equal. In addition, I don't think the Giants are even capable of putting up 30 points with this team. I don't care what defense they're playing. I think the Dolphins are a great pick. Lions would be a good spot if you already use the Dolphins. But they also have a lot of potential opportunity down the road for the rest of the season. Chiefs on the road, Eagles on the road. I like to stay away from that when I can, especially facing teams that are desperate like the Vikings, who have a lot of offensive star power. And the Rams, they're low key competing for a wild card playoff spot right now. And the Eagles haven't looked as good as I think they would have this year, so probably best to stay away on the road. And the Jags, playing the Bills in London, the Buffalo traveling all the way across the pond to play a team that has underperformed this year but has a lot of potential on both sides of the football. So that's something I'd like to stay away from. Bengals here, incredible value but also incredible risk based on what they've shown me so far this season. Again, 3 points against the Titans, who have a good defense, but still this offense is much more capable than that. They have not shown much with that offensive line unit, and it's really concerning. But again, their backs are against the wall right now. This is a team that is used to being in the playoffs, and if they want to make it again this year, they got to win this game. So if you're taking the Bengals here, you're recognizing the risk that is them on the road, but you are banking on Joe Burrow having a career performance, an iconic performance that he's been able to do and put this team back in the right direction. Ravens on the road against the divisional opponent, easy pass for me there. And the Niners facing a top 5 team in the league in the Cowboys. That seems unnecessary for me, given how great the Niners have looked all season long. So I hope that helps you decide who to pick this week. Personally, again, I think the Dolphins are far and away the best pick. And a lot of value with the Commanders. I think I would, again, be shocked if the Commanders lose. It would take them losing the turnover battle against the Bears, which is incredibly hard to do for them to lose. So good luck in Week 5, and I hope to see you again in Week 6.